So religions of all time and wise men have always talked about, false pride and vanity and ego and how those are bad things. But without the scope, without the perspective, without someone to explain why, a lot of people, a lot of us grow up thinking like, well, how are these bad things? How do these things play out in my life in a negative way? And not even in addition to that, not being capable or aware of the fact of when one is living in vanity or false pride or ego, and let alone being able to see the detriment that causes. And the thing is that when we live in that self-righteous place of it feels good. It feels good to live there, especially when we've been wronged. So, and we have these ideas and stories about how we've been wronged. But why? And so aside from the fact that it feels good, is we do that so that we don't have to feel our feelings. That's ultimately the reason why anybody does that and justifies and explains and rationalizes their behavior for doing so, which are just fancy words for lying. But people ultimately do that so that they don't have to address the hurt that's underneath all that, so that they don't have to tell the truth about the hurt that's underneath all that. 99.9% of the world's problems are a result of just that, of ferociously fighting and arguing for excuses and limitations. And if you fight and argue for your excuses and limitations, you'll get them every single fucking time. What nobody ever showed me is how to walk through that stuff. No one ever showed me that it was safe or okay. I never had this perspective or the support to understand like how to be honest about that stuff. But when I was honest about that stuff, the more that I'm willing to be honest about that stuff and talk about truthfully how it hurt, I'm free of it. It goes away. It goes away. It goes away either a little bit or it goes away altogether. And it makes my problems revolving around that. The problems that I had in my life, either a non-issue or they just go away altogether. And the perspective that I have, like I'm saying, the feelings go away, the negative feelings, and my perspective grows and changes. And in that moment is healing and emotional maturity. I get to evolve and I get to mature and I get to make different decisions because I can see that stuff. I can see that stuff further in the future. When I run across that next opportunity, I don't have that response, and I can also kind of see it coming and be like, oh, I would have behaved differently. I would have chose to participate differently. I would have seen. I would have signed myself up for misery, because every time we do that, every time that I choose to live in vanity, false pride, or ego, it sets a wave in motion that eventually creates some sort of problem in my life. I participated in that. Without learning how to get honest with myself, I never could see that. I never had anyone explain it to me. I never had anybody show me that, like, and until I got into recovery and met people who really had their shit together, because not everyone in recovery has their shit together. Let me tell you that. But the men who had long time recovery that I respected, that had wonderful, gentle, humble, solid fucking lives. Men who were not just respectable, but they were unshakable human beings. Those guys showed me through telling stories about themselves, like, hey, this is what happens. This is the law of the universe. And people have been writing it. People have been trying to write about it for thousands and tens of thousands of years. And they all talk about the same thing. The thing is that our perspective is too small. We live in these tiny We live with blinders on in these tiny little worlds with our tiny little narratives with people who co-sign our bullshit just like us. And most people don't ever get to expand and see anything outside of that. And they're really trapped in the prison of their own, you know, make-believe, it's just fantasy. And so that's where the freedom is. That's why it works. That's why that's how we participate, and that's how we move forward. And that's how we kind of go with the flow of the universe and trust to see that things can pan out differently. I was a victim to my feelings. I could never do anything different. And it's because my mind was static. It never became plastic until I was willing to address why, like how and why I participated in the problems that I had in my life. Until I became willing to challenge myself to see how I could have had something to do with it, my life never changed. And that's where real wisdom comes from, is seeing the bigger picture, being able to see the patterns. Chaos theory says, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna end the video. You know, we all know chaos theory. Oh, the butterfly flaps its wings and it causes a hurricane on the other side of the planet. It's not that it causes the hurricane. It's that if you zoom back far enough, patterns erupt. That's all that it is. Everything is patterns. Everything's math. Everything's information. Everything's physics. Everything's electromagnetic energy. And that there is room for everything to exist in the universe. And the only way that we get to change our pattern, the only way that we get to evolve, the only way that we get to grow and change our parabola, we get to change our point in the XY axis, the only way that we get to do that is learning how to be honest, growing and healing, finding some sort of healing. That's the only thing that's permanently affected any sort of authentic and genuine change in my life that's left room, that's left space in my life for the universe to bring me all the things that I've always needed, wanted, and deserved. All the things that I must have. And I never could have gotten that through any sort of willpower. It was about making the space within myself so that I could get out of my own way. The universe wants everybody to get all the things that they've always wanted, and they've always wanted. We're the only ones who get in our way. The universe doesn't have any value judgments on anything. So it's like if we can get the perspective, I found that like when I could see how I was getting in my own way, I became super willing to be able to eradicate every single thing within myself. So that that was negative, that all the old stuff around the suffering that I had in my life, so that I could see how that was the stuff that got in my way, and I couldn't ever see that before. I couldn't ever see that anymore, and I blamed everyone else, but I because I didn't know any better. Yeah, and that's it. Thanks.